afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. Welcome to the internet's most sophisticated wrestling podcast, discussing the weekly aspects of it all, right here on
The Bald Monkeys Wrestling Podcast.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Bald Monkeys Wrestling Podcast, and a kind of somber week because the WWE had to let go many talented, and let's be honest, we'll say talented jobbers. Most of them were jobbers. Most of them were
underused people
for sure. But on a side note, apparently. My nice microphone got the same message. They called my microphone up and said, "You're released. You're released of duty," because it decided it wasn't going to work today. In this last-minute recording of the Bald Monkeys Wrestling Podcast, but no need to fret about that. Let's talk of happy things, and those happy things are.
I don't know. I don't know.
Wow.
No, I don't know. It's like so let's be honest. It was not a stupendous week of wrestling. We tried to get together and watch a little bit of wrestling here and there. We watched AEW together, the three of us, but it was kind of sad, to be honest. The whole week of wrestling was kind of flat. I read through, Jimmy is nice enough to kind of list out everything that happened during the week for us. So we have some talking points, and I think I have some things to talk about as I look through everything, but all in all, it's tough right now. Wrestling is lackluster.
Can I say it? Because I love AEW, so it holds a little bit of weight.
Yeah. Jimmy needs to be the one to respond.
You sucked this week. You were awful. AEW was so bad this week, and the biggest reason that you were bad, like, I actually, by the time I got to the last match, was kind of like, this is an average show, but because you spent half of the show pushing this Jake Hager Jon Moxley match, which, to be fair, is a misbooked match in the first place. These two guys shouldn't really fight each other because they're not really the same style of fighter or anywhere close. It was lackluster. It sucked. You tried to play it like an MMA match that got a little bit crazier as it went. And then there was like this whole thing where, like, Jim Ross was talking like he didn't know what the hell was going on. Like, well, is it are there rules? Can it finish outside of the ring? Can it? Like, he didn't really know. And the only thing that I thought was really great about that whole match was when Jim Ross commented on one of them getting thrown into a barrier. He's like, "There's no fans in here. Why are there even barriers up?" Beautiful. It was wonderful. But when that's the only thing that I thought was good about a match, that's not very great. So you took an average episode, and the only thing that we got from it, was let down, other than the fact that, I'm kind of psyched. I don't know about you, Chuckles, but I'm kind of psyched about getting Chris a Britt Baker t-shirt.
Yeah, I
hate you so much.
Really, really, really excited about that. She's got a pretty cool one up that you sent us with the bloody face on it and everything, and
it kind of has a kiss.
Christopher.
It kind of has a Kiss look to it, which makes sense because they kept talking about Kiss the one episode. So yeah, he's very stoked. Like, don't listen to what he's saying right now. He's very excited about getting this t-shirt. He's very prepared to support Britt Baker. And we're excited for him. We feel good for him, Chuck.
I feel terrible. I feel sick. So bad. Like, oh man, I relate the entire show to a house show. Like it felt like a house show with a bunch of jobbers out there, no real big spots. The Moxley Hager thing wasn't even a good put together match as far as the chemistry between those two. Just all in all, just a house show. And AEW house show is tough to watch. It was atrocious. Let's be honest. I love AEW. They've done a great job. This was the first time they flat out missed. Like the entire show was just poorly done.
Which, again, we give a pass because of, the current climate. And the fact that these are all pre-taped shows, they kind of use what they had. You can tell that half of the wrestlers are wrestlers that, are training at QT Marshall's gym, and they use them for some of these matches. So, kudos to them for getting an opportunity to be spotlit, even though, not all of you were necessarily worth spotlighting. I don't think that Golden was
come on.
very
Pineapple
good.
Pete is a
Pineapple
gem.
Pete or
Pineapple
Pineapple
So-
Pete is a
Suge-
gem.
Shug D
Shug D.
is his actual name.
Should no, his name
Well,
is Pineapple Pete.
Well, that's
He
fine.
doesn't change
His
his name and rebrand. He's an idiot.
His actual listed name is Shug D, though, for that match. And he was actually very good. I liked him quite a bit. The Law kid that faced Spears, not so great.
Oh,
Golden that faced Baker, not so great.
Oh my! The what did she even finish her with? Was it an arm toss? Like the way that match finished was just weird too. She
there
like
was
used
only
the ropes or
4
something and like
moves.
smashed her face. She smashed her face against the ropes. That's gonna be her finisher. Like it's so obvious that Britt Baker is searching for good wrestling or a good wrestling move to somehow pair with her terrible promos. I don't understand. Like there's just nothing there for Britt Baker.
Well,
You
right
know
now.
what? You know what? I don't understand.
It's her version of the curb stomp. She
Yeah.
just puts the girl on the
another
rope.
stolen
and does
thing.
the
Another
curb stomp.
stolen thing that Britt Baker's gonna do.
Oh,
because
get
she just
over
steals
your
her entire
stolen
gimmick.
thing. Oh my gosh.
Stolen.
That was the most ridiculous thing.
true.
We're watching AEW, and I swear, every word that every wrestler has ever uttered in the entire world, when somebody on AEW utters it, Chris is like, they stole that from Edge. They stole that from this person. It's like, you can't have.
No,
You can't.
it's not. It's specific to Britt Baker. I was just
Okay.
jokingly laying it on for the rest of the show, but it's very specific to Britt Baker stealing the role model gimmick from Bailey because it's like you're not a role model. That's not your gimmick. That was Bailey's gimmick before, and you shouldn't do the same exact gimmick because it's telling that it's the same exact gimmick. Find something different. The dentist one, that's her gimmick, 100%, and she should lay that in thicker and thicker. And they keep doing that, and it's funny. But the role model one, that makes no sense. I'm a role model because I'm a dentist. That's not working.
I mean,
What everybody wants to be, a dentist.
I think that Chris is just trying really hard to convince me and Chuck that he doesn't.
I know
actually
I'm getting the
love-
shirt.
like,
I
he
know I'm
loves
getting the
Britt
shirt. It's
Baker.
okay. I've reserved the fact that yes, I'm getting the shirt. It's you know what? It's
Oh.
100% better than the Bobby Lashley shirt. Let's put it that way. I will wear that shirt better than the Bobby Lashley.
I actually, are you actually thinking straight here? Because I don't know that it is. I think you hate Britt Baker more than you hate Bobby Lashley.
I do. I 100% do, but I still think the Britt Baker shirt is better than the Bobby Lashley shirt.
Well, yeah, because the Lashley's shirt doesn't really say anything per se.
Yeah, it's kind of like Bobby Lashley. It says nothing. Yeah. Hey, let's jump into Raw and let's kind of like just rattle down some of this list that you got here, Jimmy, because I actually have some thoughts on it, and I want to kind of roll into McIntyre as the champion and Austin Theory and Garza and our friend Andrade. So what do you guys think of the faction that is quickly forming of Andrade, Garza, and Austin Theory? What is your initial thoughts of this faction?
I think initially Theory was kind of misstepping, but he's starting to get his stride a little bit. I think he just needed a couple weeks.
Yeah, I kind of like it. I mean, if for whatever reason, we're not going to get, what you guys want as the LWO. I mean, it is kind of cool to see, three of the younger stars kind of be together in a little bit of a faction here. And I mean, Theory is that they're all good wrestlers in my opinion. So I mean, having a mouthpiece like Zelina to kind of front them all, I mean, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, see, I'm 100%. Like, I think I was obviously big on the LWO train as well. I think it made more sense to have that third guy be more of an LWO member. But that being said, these three looked strong all night long. They did an amazing job, and they made them look strong throughout the night. Zelina was doing a great job standing on the announce table, and then it all came crashed down at the end of the episode. I don't understand why they had to build this episode up and build that faction to look so strong all night long, and then make Andrade take the pin at the end of the night. I feel like that was a misstep at the end of the night. They should have just had Andrade take the DQ, had the guys come out. To me, it was a misstep completely.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm giving mini passes, and quite frankly, with all transparency, I watch very little of this stuff anymore. I watch very little Raw and very little SmackDown at this point. I'm kind of fairly focused on AEW and NXT, and I backfill that with NWA Power. So
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be transparent too. I said that before we started taping today. I'm probably not going to watch SmackDown much going forward. Fox, to their credit and also probably discredit, they'll tweet out a review of the entire show, and that'll probably be how I keep up with SmackDown for the next couple of weeks, because until the crowds come back, it's just tough to watch, man. It's interesting. They do a couple little snippets here and there of 30 seconds of good promos or something, but there really isn't a lot of good content that's 3 hours worth for you to watch. Um,
I just always
another
come back to that whole there's too many cooks in the kitchen type thing. So when you
Wow,
have Raw,
yeah.
AEW, NXT, SmackDown, Impact, NWA Power, um, and then anytime that you can fill yourself in with some Ring of Honor or some New Japan, like that's just too many things for me to keep up with, quite frankly. I mean, I
Well,
I have a full-time job apart from this, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Just watching wrestling is a full-time job.
Exactly. It's like when you watch
Yeah,
all of
it's
that, it
gotten
is.
intense. Yeah. Wrestling, I mean, it's good. It's a good problem to have too much wrestling to watch, right? I mean, that's okay. Uh, what about, and this is still on the topic of Raw, but let's talk about Sarah Logan. Let's talk about No Way Jose. Let's talk about those two flying in to do a taping of Raw and then getting released the next day.
It's
I
pretty
mean,
crappy.
that's pretty crappy. And I understand the situation that WWE is in. I don't really fault them for what they have to do. It is what it is. I mean, a lot of companies are in this area right now. WWE tends to release people after a while anyway, but this obviously escalated things. But to have these two come in, wrestle, and then get released the next day, it's just a weird send off for especially those two that I think, at least from the outside of as a fan looking in, have been two wrestlers that have done what they've been asked, have always been able to, put over their characters, whether they be strong or not. No Way Jose's a fun character, but he's obviously a jobber. Sarah Logan, I think, is a character, but she's a jobber. But to have them come out and job and then get released the next day, it's just rough. And it's, kind of puts into perspective what their jobs are, and unfortunately what the industry is right now.
It's like almost it's almost like a slap in the face in a way. It's like, hey, come here. We need you to do this. Okay, you're gone.
I started to step back from that thought process, because that was my initial knee-jerk reaction. Like, man, that is dirty. That is really awful of them to do. But It's more tape. It's more tape for them to show like what they've been able to do, right? It's more tape for them to show what kind of character they are and how good of a wrestler they are. So anytime
True.
they're getting airtime, like let's put it to Mike Bennett. Mike Bennett wasn't getting a lot of airtime. So is it better to get no airtime and then get released, or better to get airtime and then get released?
And do we know if they were told after, like, they taped Raw, or were they like, was
Believe
something mentioned to them, or?
no. Basically, from my readings, there was a conversation, a meeting with any wrestlers or a broad. I don't know if it was an email or just McMahon talking to everybody on like a webcast or something, basically telling them that we're in trouble. This is what's going on. Obviously, COVID is causing this, and everybody who's going to get released will get a personal phone call, and then later on everyone got one-on-one phone calls, and then the whole list came out of who got released.
And I still think, I mean, well, the one thing that became clear, because Heath Slater decided that he was going to finally weigh in on it after he had a little bit of time to think. And what's interesting is it sounds like all these people are getting paid till July. Like they've got like their 90-day releases signed. That also means that they can't sign with anybody for that long. Now, not that there's really anybody to sign with or anything that's like super active, but I do foresee, as I look at this list, about half of these people, if not more, signing to one of three promotions, and that being Impact, AEW, or New Japan. Very few of them will go to New Japan, by the way. But there's two that I think are fairly certain to go to New Japan at this point, because they're super popular over there, and that's Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows.
Yeah, I read an article somebody put up, and it wasn't for everybody on the list. I would say it was probably for about 12 to 15 of them, but put down where they think, they might be able to go. And like even one or two were mentioned to go to like NWA as well.
Oh yeah. I've heard who would be good to go to NWA, and I heard a compelling argument as to why Rusev should go to NWA specifically, because he would just be like a superpower on NWA. Whereas, what do you really do with him on those other promotions? It's an interesting thought process. I mean, heck, I think Mike Bennett and Maria Kanellis, they should go to Ring of Honor.
Yeah, that's where Bennett's had his biggest push, I think, is in Ring of Honor, and I think now that Marty's over there helping out, I think it makes all the sense in the world for Bennett to go there with Kanellis. And man, I think the two of them could reinvent themselves like for the 17th time and maybe bring the kingdom back. I mean, or it's already there, but maybe just kind of inject themselves back into it. And it's as Jimmy loves factions, I think that's a really strong faction when you put those two in there. What about Sarah Logan? I really feel like she's just gonna kind of float for a little bit and then come back. I think she's one of those that I think is more of a furlough situation than a release.
Well, I kind of think the same thing about Drake Maverick, though, to a certain extent. Like, even though he was the one who put out the most passionate video, I think that I could see WWE bringing him back. Whereas guys like Zack Ryder, like the second Zack Ryder got let go, you have Cody Rhodes posting pictures of him and stuff like that, and it's leading everybody to believe like, yeah, there's no way that Cody Rhodes is gonna let Zack Ryder slip through his fingers. He's gonna pick him up immediately.
Yeah, the issue I see with Zack Ryder is it's like what is Zack Ryder going to do outside of being who he is, and they kind of already have that character in AEW. I feel like a QT Marshall or who's the Dungeons and Dragons guy who's like whatever the last number is on the roster as far as wins and losses. He's like their ultimate jobber.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
I
can't remember his name.
Here it is. Zack Ryder, as he put his T-shirt "Not There" on Pro Wrestling Tees, quickly rose to the top selling T-shirt of the week. because that's what Zack Ryder is. He is great at merchandising himself. That's why Zack Ryder was in WWE in the first place. He merchandised himself. He promoted himself. So while I think he would be popular, air quotes, I don't know that AEW is the right fit for him. I honestly think just again waiting and going back to WWE makes sense for a guy like him.
To do what? To not be on screen?
To be
Again,
yes,
if
again
I
to
know that
be
he may
signed
like it. I know that he
to
may
do
like
social
doing
media.
that. I know that he may like doing
Just
that.
because you're not wrestling, I mean, you could wrestle on the house shows, you could wrestle on main event. Just because you're not on the main show doesn't mean you're not part of the company, doesn't mean you're not making money, doesn't mean you're not being, good at promoting yourself. That's a lot of these guys are doing more on social media than in the ring, and that's a business. That's a business for them. They still get to wrestle, but not as much. And as you get into your late 30s, early 40s, you shouldn't wrestle that much more because you're going to end up in a wheelchair if you continue to try to take these bumps. These guys are beat. I mean, look at some of the dark side guys that are doing these interviews. They're in wheelchairs. They could barely walk. They have walkers and canes. You know why? Because they wrestled so much back in the day. They were wrestling 6 times a week back in the day. Now it's like, okay, maybe I can wrestle once a week. Maybe I can wrestle 3 times a month and still make good money.
Was Zack Ryder wrestling at all?
Yeah, he was wrestling at house shows and he was wrestling
Yeah.
on main event. Yeah, 100%. You didn't see it because you weren't watching those things. You weren't watching house shows and you weren't watching main event. You weren't watching any WWE, but still.
Yeah, it's hard for me to get to all those house shows. It's really difficult.
You don't get your plane up and going. You should hook
Yeah,
up with
I don't know.
Nakamura.
The engine's
Hey.
been down. I've been trying to work on it, but they've been. I
Wow,
can't go
you're
to
a terrible
I
technician.
can't
so,
go.
hey.
I can't go to the airfield because they want me to stay in my house.
You're a tool.
Sometimes.
I think we sometimes overreact to what these guys like doing or don't like doing on the roster. I think they'd be okay. I mean, Kurt Hawkins was one. He basically was
why are you
ecstatic that he got to sit home.
Stop eating.
Because I got to eat lunch, man. I'm hungry.
Well, don't eat while you're talking. Then just pass it
Don't
off
make
to
me
somebody
talk.
and eat.
No, I'm gonna keep talking.
Gracious,
off now.
it's turning into an ASMR video. People are gonna be listening. I want to hear Christopher Chew.
I mean, all in all, with everything that happened with the series of wrestlers getting let go, if what you said was true and they are getting paid to July, I mean, hey, that's good. That doesn't put them in a really bad predicament, and hopefully, crossing fingers, by July, I mean, really hope we're back to a semi semblance of normal. So maybe these guys, after that 90 days is up or whatever, they can go to wherever they're going to go. But you just hope that they all kind of land on their feet and don't go down a bad path or anything.
I mean, I don't disagree with Chris. I think I could see about half these people going back to WWE. But I mean, obviously there are the glaring ones that I don't see why they would want to. And you're to his point, I don't know what they think. But to be fair, I don't know that anybody knows what they think. So guys like EC3, I'm assuming he doesn't want to be in the WWE because of how they're not using
he's
him.
done.
No way.
Yeah, so I think he's stoked to be let go. Just like Mike Bennett,
Yeah.
even though Mike Bennett just signed this big contract, he's like, well, I wanted to be released before they gave me that big contract, so it's not the end of the world. Which is why I think that Mike and Maria were both able to put out kind of good videos and be and talk about being thankful and stuff like that. I mean, I didn't think that they were lying in those videos, but at the same time, I'm like, they're fine. They're gonna be fine. They'll make it through, and then they'll be, towards the middle or the top of any card that they go to. But yeah, I mean, some of these guys, I mean, I guess part of me wants more for them because I know how good they can be or they have been. Like a guy like, Kurt Hawkins, how good he actually is versus what they use him for. And it's hard to, as a wrestling fan, like, regardless of what the wrestler thinks, for me to watch a wrestler that I know has all this potential, and if they're just being put in jobber mode, like, it's, it's annoying to me. The only one that really annoyed me was Heath Slater, and the reason that it annoyed me the most was because you had this guy on the bump with Drew McIntyre getting very emotional about how proud he was about Drew McIntyre, and it was this really great moment. And then just for a few days later, for him to, get let go and to be just totally, upset about that. I don't know, man. You had the opportunity to keep that guy on and give him some form of a championship so that you could say that, 3MB, like, I thought that was an interesting storyline. And, Heath Slater has legitimately, as a jobber, to like put over every single person he has ever been in the ring with. I mean, goodness gracious.
But and again, let's wait and see, because maybe you still can get that.
Sure.
Maybe these guys are still coming back, and then it's a great story, another comeback story. Another funny thing, Heath Slater's T-shirt on Pro Wrestling Tees, instead of "I got kids," it says "I got fired." It was great. Another like
That's
proof of
awesome.
a guy who knows how to merchandise himself, right? Really good stuff. Let's let's jump over to SmackDown real quick. I kind of want to leave NXT last because that's probably the best show of the week. So SmackDown, there was a moment in the clip that I watched where I guess Braun came out and did an interview on Moment of Bliss, and obviously they announced that Bray and Braun are going to have a match at Money in the Bank, which we should get into also. But there was an interesting comment done during that interview where Braun made a point to say, if you're gonna come after me and not my title, and I was like, whoa. I was like, are they 100% pointing out the fact that Bray doesn't care about the title? That Bray cares about coming after Braun? Have you guys been able to watch that or catch that?
I mean, I made a few calls and I said, last week we talked about this, and you guys need to get your writers straight and make sure that they listen to our podcast and listen to the great ideas that we're pumping out. So I'll take the credit for that.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks for that. Thanks for making that phone call. But it was like I honestly, like, I was watching the highlights and I'm like, oh geez, here we go. They're gonna cut a promo, and then he stops himself and says that, and I'm like, whoa. I'm like, are they doing something right? I don't know yet. I don't want to count on it yet, but maybe.
Well, like we said, I mean, I think everybody in the WWE wants to have one of these crazy Bray matches at this point. And if you're going to spread yourself out and do a bunch of those matches, you can't have a title involved. It just doesn't. It's not conducive to the jumps that you would have to make between stars, because it would be great to do specifically the John Cena type wrestler. So do a Randy Orton. Randy Orton's had this really long career. Do, the career of Randy Orton and have this, crazy vignette, and it almost reinvigorates these wrestlers for at least a very short time, or at least gives the hardcore wrestling fans a little bit of closure about the things that they didn't like about a wrestler. I mean, one of the biggest complaints about John Cena was everybody always wanted him to turn heel. So the whole point of that vignette was, by the end of the vignette, he has turned heel and then he's destroyed for it. Kind of. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting stuff.
It's interesting. I mean, I don't know. There's something there that if they do it right, I think we love Bray Wyatt, where he's going after people and not going after a belt. We hate when he has it. So I hope they continue that. What about Sonya's promo that she cut on Mandy Rose? I was able to go back and watch that in full.
Well, again, I think that it is a solid prediction from this podcast as to the possible direction they are going with Sonya. That most of this whole situation is going to be used as a catalyst to launch Sonya into the next level, which she is the next level. I mean, she is that good. So why not create a story that pulls at people's heartstrings so that you then set up the destruction of the heartstrings to create a like this catalyst to just launch Sonya Deville into the stratosphere, basically. And I think that that is the direction that we're going with that character for sure.
It was interesting. I saw a lot of positive social media out there. People were really into the promo she cut. I thought it was good. I don't know that it was as outstanding as people are trying to say it was. I think that I have a few criticisms of what she went into, and I think she should have layered in some of the moments that Mandy kind of, I don't want to say stole, but took from Sonya, like the Money in the Bank. When she was actually trying to help Mandy Rose up the ladder because she wasn't even in the match because they kind of had to give up one spot and then Sonya just stepped to the side. So they need to start layering in pieces like that for it to, I think, start really building stronger stories inside of what that feud could be.
Well, again, given the climate of wrestling right now, I'm not really surprised that they would look at something like this promo and blow it up as being like the greatest thing since sliced bread because what else is going on in a world of comparisons when all you have to compare to is a pretty rough week of wrestling. Anything that's positive looks extra positive. I think the consistent watching of wrestling, so many different shows, that helps us look at some of these promos and see them in a little bit of a fairer light. So am I saying that people tend to over exaggerate and are way too slanted to the promotions that they watch and overhype it? Absolutely, that's what I'm saying. People are ridiculous.
True.
I mean, we saw that after WrestleMania. I mean, people thought that WrestleMania was one of the greatest WrestleManias ever, and it's like, no, you're sitting in your house, you haven't had anything to watch, you watched this WrestleMania and you thought it was amazing. It wasn't amazing. It had its moments, but it wasn't amazing. So that's no different from, the live shows week to week. I mean, you don't have a crowd, and I don't think that the crowd at home realizes how much the crowd affects them when they're watching it. Because if Sonya Deville were to get up in front of a humongous crowd of people and start cutting a promo and they started whatting her like crazy, then that promo loses some of its fire. That's why I personally hate the what chant in general. Unless you're doing it to somebody who is going up there to be the cocky heel and do a cocky heel promo anyway. Because then it doesn't hurt that promo. But when they're trying to push somebody up the ladder that hasn't quite taken a hold yet, and then the whole crowd starts going, what? What? Like every single time they say something, it is very detrimental to the wrestling industry in general. The fans. It's crazy.
It's a strong chant, man. People love it. People will always love that chant. So to finish the show, we actually get freaking new champions. I love and I hate this. I love that they were being creative with what they had to do at WrestleMania with the singles ladder match. So they were kind of being flexible, and I like the idea that it never been done before. But then they just have a triple threat match, like a regular triple threat match for the tag titles, and now Big E ends up winning the tag titles for New Day for the 8th time, and it's like, I don't know, it just, I feel like going through what we're going through and dealing with no crowd and dealing with trying to stretch out story, why make this switch? Why force this into what, we have to make a title change right now? Why not just make everything status quo for a little while?
I didn't watch SmackDown. I just read about it. But did they have the reverse of who is in the WrestleMania match?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Complete reverse. Yes.
So ultimately it was almost the same match, but not the same match.
Yeah. So basically, imagine this: if you take a triple threat ladder match, tag team ladder match, and take half of the match and show it on one night with 3 guys with the ladder, and take half of the match and show it with the other guys and take out the ladder, that's what you saw. You basically, if they put those 2 matches together, it would have been a really cool match. It would have been great. But instead, they peeled it into 2 matches, and they both were kind of like, eh.
The only thing, as a defense, though, to the entirety of the match, of both matches, rather, is the interesting story that you have coming out of that match, where Morrison is the Iron Man that's able to carry his tag team to victory, and Miz is not. So you create the interesting storyline between Miz and Morrison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But isn't that, I don't know, man. That's like kind of quick for those two. Like, I feel like they haven't even had time to like be a tag team, but all you really did was set them up so that they can quickly split them.
Yeah, it just the whole thing just seems weird. Like, again, like now we have the New Day as the champions again for the 8th time, I think. So yeah, now we get a little bit new version of the entrance for the New Day. But yeah, it just it just seems so quick, and with everything that's going on, they didn't even really have a chance to like even be a tag team. So it's like, okay, so what was the point of bringing them back together?
Well, 2 things, right? Tag team wrestling doesn't matter in the WWE. And to that end, the second thing I would like to put, as my dog attacks me, is how about every single week we have the belts flop between the Usos and the New Day until quarantine's over, because who cares? And at the end of it, they'll just each be able to say, we've been tag team champions way more than any other tag teams, since tag team wrestling doesn't matter. God, dog, you're killing me.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Those are good matches. Like, I could watch the Usos and the New Day just have tag matches back and forth over and over again. I mean, that's basically what SmackDown was doing there for a good, 6 months? And it was some of the best tag team wrestling we've seen in a long time. So I'm not 100% against that. I kind of think that's a good idea right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, so they've got those 2 tag teams always. I don't know that they're ever going to split up. And then you got Miz and Morrison, who are the new kids in town, and all that does is say with the I don't know, with the dislike of tag team wrestling, or the non-committalness to tag team wrestling, that with all the people that they've let go, that maybe you need Miz and Morrison to be flexible, to be solo wrestlers. So regardless of the story, because again, the WWE, although their business should be writing good stories and making interesting wrestling matches, I find that their storylines and their production and stuff match, oh, well, this is a business decision. So we're doing this because this is a business decision based on, the money that we do or do not have to spend, instead of letting the story like be the main focus and then just making those decisions around it.
Explain to me the business decision around Tamina beating Sasha Banks and Dana Brooke beating Naomi. because those two,
There's none.
I think, were bizarro world. Like, I agree with what you said, Jimmy, but those two matches completely go against what you said. Other than maybe Tamina gets a little bit of story out of it because obviously Bailey needs an opponent.
Dude, it totally goes back to my dartboard theory. Unfortunately, the darts didn't go the right way, and that's why Dana Brooke and Tamina won.
So the one that I can explain, you're killing me, dog.
Tamina.
The
Tamina,
one that
you
I can explain is Tamina, because Tamina makes sense. Because you're building this story between Bailey and Sasha, and
wait. Makes sense. Makes sense the outcome, but not make sense the way the outcome was presented. You can't tell me Tamina super kicks Sasha Banks one time and wins that match clean. That makes zero sense when it comes to Sasha Banks and her persona around her entire career. One super kick knocks out Sasha Banks. Come on.
unless they're trying to rebuild Tamina to be just a crazy, powerful force.
At Sasha Banks' expense.
Well, I mean, wouldn't be the first time. I don't know.
I don't know. I get the Tamina thing because ultimately Bailey can take on Tamina at Money in the Bank. That way Tamina doesn't have to be in the ladder match, which for good. That's probably safe for everybody. But Sasha Banks, well, okay. So as I talk through this, I have a story that I just thought of, but I think the finish should have been more of a Sasha getting some kind of extra injury or something, or Bailey distracting her, or roll up, or a hold of the tights. One super kick clean win, I don't think was a good way to finish that. But yes, I agree with you. Tamina, we can explain. And now Tamina goes to take on Bailey at Money in the Bank. Maybe you put Sasha in the Money in the Bank match now. Maybe Sasha comes out, cashes in during the Tamina Bailey match, and Sasha takes the title from Bailey. That would be an interesting story.
And I think Dana Naomi, like your reasoning on that one is more just well, it's not like either of these people are going to win. So Dana's given a lot to the company and jobbed a lot out and stuff like that, so let her win a match and let her be in a match. You know, I don't see the harm in it.
She's gotten better. She's still not great, but she's gotten better, and she can at least hold her own in the ring. But
who's better, Dana Brooke or
Dana
Britt
Brooke.
Baker?
Oh, Dana Brooke.
Dana Brooke. I knew, Dana Brooke.
The answer was Dana Brooke,
Agreed.
no matter who you said, pretty much, if you were going to say a bad wrestler.
Yeah. There's Britt Baker, Chelsea Green, and everybody else. That's basically the order it goes in. Where I'm still questioning if they're two different people. But
yeah, I was just gonna say, isn't Britt Baker Chelsea Green?
Yeah, that they're doppelgangers, right?
So how was NXT? I fast forwarded through it. I'll defer to you guys because I unfortunately didn't really get the full impact of a lot of the matches.
Well, I think there were solid matches. I thought that Finn Balor, Fabian Eichner was a solid match.
Yeah, good match. And I liked Balor coming out at the end during the Keith Lee promo too.
You mean the Velveteen promo?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Velveteen promo.
Yeah, I enjoyed that because, yeah, you know, Velveteen makes the mistake of calling Adam Cole the best champion ever, and then Finn Balor takes exception to that. I like those little turns that you're not expecting. Like, I wasn't expecting Finn Balor to come out there, so when all of a sudden the camera panned over and Finn Balor's standing there, it's like, what the hell is Finn Balor doing out here?
That would be an interesting triple threat, those three guys.
For sure. Yeah, and then yeah, what else did you have? You had a fairly forgettable match between Tegan Knox and Rachel Gonzalez, where Dakota Kai interferes, and then Shotzi counter interferes. Again, I would say forgettable. You had a match between Oh, what was that guy name? He's like Tahuti Miles, and what was the creepy guy with the gloves? What's his name? Desmond what? I can't remember his last name, but he's like Dexter. I'm sorry, his name is Dexter.
Dexter
Loomis. Yeah. I should know
He's
that.
looming in the background.
Well, no. I should always remember Dexter Loomis because, like, think of Dexter, like the show Dexter, and then Loomis as in like Dr. Loomis from Halloween. I don't know why, I shouldn't ever forget that. But yeah, so Dexter Loomis, that was a fun match. I like that character a lot. It's interesting. It's creepy. As I was watching it with, Sarah and Chaz, like Sarah was getting creeped out by it, and I'm like, well, good. That means that's kind of working a little bit.
Yeah, his character works really well. I haven't loved the matches. I'd be on the other side of the fence with that. He took a couple of drop kicks in that match from what I saw, and he kind of did his finishing move as like a side slam into that sleeper or kind of clutch move. I'm not sure what it's called exactly, but that the finisher I think is interesting, and the way he puts it in I think is interesting. But the rest of the match was kind of him just slamming the guy with his arm, and he's got the persona down. He just needs, I think, some more interesting moves in the ring. But maybe he's holding back on them. Maybe he's saving them for when he starts getting showcased more.
You know what's not on my listed thing for this NXT show though was the Broserweight-ish match where you didn't have Pete Dunne there.
Oh,
But you had
Oh,
Matt
man.
Riddle, and I can't even remember what that guy's name was, but it was a very like the thing we're running into too much recently. And again, it's kind of confusing, like with the situation again that we're in. Like, how do you deal with bringing a new wrestler like that in and having the announcers put him over in a proper
Timothy
way?
Thatcher.
Yes, Timothy Thatcher, because
He
there's been
looked
two like I want to
awful.
let's compare NXT to AEW real quick, and we'll say like so with AEW, who was it that came in and they were acting like they didn't even know who he was, like JR, like kind of wasn't putting him over, versus Timothy Thatcher, where Tom Phillips and Byron Saxton are putting over so hard. And they put him over so hard that by the time he actually gets in the ring, it's like this lanky guy just kind of smacking on people. Like, why are you putting him over so hard?
He is so NXT UK. Like, he needs to be in NXT UK. He would fit perfectly over there. That's the style he wrestles. I get that. He did not fit in that match. It was weird. It was choppy. He was sweating before he even got in the ring, got that first tag. Like, some of the moves he did weren't even, his finishing move was even weird. Like, nothing looked good of that match when he was in the ring. And Undisputed Era are known for some of the best wrestling you could see, as far as working with a guy, jobbing for a guy, bumping for a guy. And man, it was rough. Luckily, Roderick Strong did a lot of great, like, Roderick Strong's awesome with all his like upper knees that he hits guys with. They're loud, they sound great. But other than that, that match was rough.
It was very, very rough, And it was funny because one of the statements that was made while we were watching it, Chaz said, my Chaz, not your Chaz, said, I never thought I'd say this, but I miss Pete Dunne because he doesn't like Pete Dunne.
Yeah, Pete, you appreciate how good some wrestlers are when you see a wrestler that's not as good working with guys that are, really, really good workers. And you could tell Pete Dunne's always, I mean, think about all the great Pete Dunne matches we've seen. We've seen Pete Dunne, Adam Cole.
Oh, I don't agree. I don't
Tyler
agree.
Bate,
I think
Yeah.
Pete Dunne's spectacular.
He's epic. Yeah, he's really good. But I think you appreciate how really good he is when you're stuck with somebody else. And I'm sure Timothy Thatcher has got a good following. I'm sure he's got an interesting, move set, but it just didn't fit into this match at all.
Yeah. We also had a segment at the very end of NXT which saw Ciampa basically admitting to Gargano, that maybe he was the better man, and then all of a sudden he gets attacked by a mysterious figure who is actually Killer Cross. Oh, wait a second. It's not Killer Cross, because all of a sudden WWE put a t-shirt up that said the name, and his name is going to be Karrion Kross, which is an awful name. Like, just make his name Cross. That's all they had to do. It's like the one time in the history of the WWE where just giving somebody just the one name would have worked. And instead, you're like, oh, we can't do Killer, so let's do Karrion, but we'll spell it with a K. Oh my gosh. What's
Terrible.
happening?
It's absolutely terrible. Like, I can't, like, I mean, think of any one of another adjective for kill, killer, anything. I mean, come on. You could have done so much better.
Chris, right now, give me a name for Killer Cross. That's not Cross.
Killer.
Awful.
That's just it's okay to call somebody Killer.
Yeah, I know.
It's
I mean,
wrestling.
AEW has Murder Hawk. Like,
but the problem still though is calling him Killer Cross was always going to be a WWE problem, because that's his name. He owns that name. He owns the rights to that name. WWE doesn't make money off of that name. Killer Cross makes money off of that name. And WWE can't have that. This is one of the most annoying things about WWE. If you have an established character on the independents or with another promotion that allows you to create your own name and market your own name, when you go to WWE, you lose it. You have to change it.
Stupid freaking WWE.
So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it will come out that it was his idea to call himself Karrion, and then we can say that he's the stupid one for calling himself Karrion Kross, because it's still a horrible name, even if it's his idea.
Yeah. It just should have been Cross. You're right. Just leave it as Cross.
I mean, that at least would have been like, oh my God, it's Cross. Like, that sounds fine. But maybe they wouldn't want that because, they just can't use the word cross by itself. That would be too offensive. I don't know. But am I excited to see Karrion Kross? Yes, I am. And I look forward to them starting to pump that story through. And I don't think they showed Scarlett, but they showed her boot, right? So
yeah, she showed her boot. I am I'm on the other side. I don't
not
like
on the Cross train.
I don't like Cross versus Ciampa as the first feud for him. But I think that's mainly because I want Ciampa to be a heel again. And once again, it seems like they're going to continue with Ciampa as the face.
Well, when he came out, Chaz started freaking out and was saying, because they're gonna have DIY come back together to face, Karrion Kross. It's like, maybe. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but you can only do so many flips before people get tired of flips.
Well, at this point, I think the likelihood is you let Cross and Ciampa go, you let Velveteen continue to climb that ladder to get to Adam Cole, and then you put Gargano in the title picture with Keith Lee. I mean, that's probably the way everything shakes out, especially since you got the tag titles still on the Broserweights.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that all those storylines are fine. I do agree with you. How can we get Ciampa in a situation where he can become a heel again? And at this point, with the way that they're writing him, it's just not possible.
But they had it. They literally had it the moment he went off the rails. When Gargano said Willow, that was the moment
But
that
is that
they had
Ciampa?
Ciampa the heel. They had Ciampa the heel again,
Is it?
and they went backwards.
Is it though?
Yes.
The reason
yes.
I ask is it though is because you're talking about somebody getting enraged by somebody invoking the name of their child. That is not necessarily heel making, in my opinion. That's rage inducing for even a good guy.
Right. But what happens is the rage pushes you over the edge that you go too far. They could have continued that narrative where he not only starts just destroying him and saying, say your name again, say it again, just destroys him and does something so epically outrageous that the ref's like, what are you doing? How could I understand, but how could you do that? You can't do that. No, that's too far. That's too far. They could have pushed it and pushed it and pushed it and got Ciampa into that heel realm again.
So what they should have done was this, right? He starts going off on Johnny Gargano. He's obliterating him, and then Candice gets in the ring, and then he obliterates Candice. That's what they should have. That's what they should have done.
That answers it too. That Candice runs in and said, "Stop! Enough! You've won. It's over. It's over." And you see Ciampa kind of thinking about it, kind of doing a little bit of a Randy Orton, thinking about it, and then comes over, grabs Candice, throws her into the happy the fairy tale ending, and that's how that you could end that match. And then now Ciampa is ultimate heel heat at that point, and you can let Gargano and Candice go back to being faces, because I don't mind them as heels, but they're just better as baby faces.
I agree. It's interesting because it's rare that we say that about wrestlers. There's way too many wrestlers that are better as heels, and it's a problem. Because who are your baby faces at that point? You know, you have to hold on to the ones that you have. You have to have Daniel Bryan be, I know he can play a good heel, but you almost have to have him play babyface. And you almost have to have Kofi play babyface. And you have to have Johnny Gargano play babyface, because if not, who the hell else is? Everybody's a bad guy.
I'm a bad guy. So, this is a good segue to our friend Ali. Jimmy's one of your favorite wrestlers that we haven't seen for a while. And it seems, as much as we've pitched out some different ideas around this, the Truth Will Be Heard promo, it seems like this is going to be Ali. Like every sign kind of points to it. I mean, obviously the big circle image is his hand image. So it looks like they're repackaging Ali. Is this Ali's way of coming back as a face or a heel? I think that's my questioning at this point.
I think that it's a little bit neutral, because think of it in the way that they portray it, right? A hacker, okay? So a hacker, let's say, hacks sensitive government information and then puts it out to the people. And that information is something that the people needed to know. Is that hacker a good guy or a bad guy?
It depends. It depends what area you're sitting in. If you're sitting in the I'm for the government, you're saying he's a bad guy. If you're sitting in the government is doing these negative things towards us, he's a good guy.
So that's exactly how I think the character's going to go over. In that he's getting involved in situations he doesn't need to be involved in. Those people are going to consider him to be a heel. Whereas if he's exposing things that need to be, I mean, you're going to have to manufacture them.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, hey, I mean, earmuffs to all the serious fans that think wrestling's super real. It's fake, so they can just make up a bunch of storylines that work for it.
Well, yeah, he'd be the aggravator, right? Like he or the agitator, or whatever, any one of those terrible wrestling names. But he could be, come in and basically be the reason why maybe Morrison and The Miz break up, because he shows some footage or something of Morrison talking bad about Miz or vice versa. Like you can continue to utilize him as the catalyst. See, I got a bunch of words for this. for every single feud that you can build, he could just continually step in and create the feud. It's actually a really good mechanism for story because essentially he never has to wrestle. He just is the mechanism to create storylines.
Yes, but that's a big issue for me because he is one of the most talented bump takers that the WWE has. He is like the new like Ziggler. Like he's that good at taking bumps, and occasionally he takes it a little too far and hurts himself, but it's only happened like maybe once, twice. But I would hate to see him not wrestling. I mean, one of the reasons that he's one of my favorite wrestlers is because he is a wrestler that wrestles. And I would like to continue to see him wrestle. So I see where you're coming from, and I agree, but you definitely have to integrate wrestling into it. So the question is, how do you make it more viable to integrate wrestling into it? And can you do that by making it a faction eventually? And if you did make it a faction, how would you make said faction? And one of the cool ideas that we pitched was it being Roman Reigns. Well, why not let it be both?
Shorty G just popped into my head too.
Oh God.
Somebody we haven't talked about. I mean, I just wonder if he could be somehow layered into that faction
somewhere the boss Stephen Hill is smiling and thinking about Shorty G for no particular reason.
I'm not pitching any different storyline. I'm just saying you put Chad Gable in that faction.
No, I wasn't talking. Again, I said for no particular reason. I didn't say because you brought it up. He's just thinking about Shorty G somewhere and smiling.
Thinking about his hot like fluorescent pants and just hanging in there with the big SG.
Yes.
My thing is how saying that it is Ali. How are they going to unveil his new character to wrestle? Like, is he just going to come out like here's the hacker and then it's Ali, or like is he going to come out in the getup that he's wearing like in front of the computer screens and then like pull the hood back and then it's like boom, oh it's Ali.
See Seth Rollins reveal, repeat.
Yeah. I wonder if it would be beneficial to let him wear a mask. And if he can learn to wrestle in that mask, let him wrestle in that mask. So he wrestles in like a black hoodie.
Ooh, what if he's the guy that's abducting all these wrestlers from NXT and he's building almost like a fight club?
Like is that storyline still going on?
That would be awesome.
It is.
Who all's been taken?
Mendoza, Phoenix. I think it was just those two, right?
Anybody get let go yet?
No one's emerged. We haven't seen them since they've been abducted.
Okay. So Mendoza and Phoenix and Ali. I mean, again, you can make it factional and it could work, especially if you built it like a handful of really like talented cruiserweight style wrestlers. It could kind of work. I don't know. I think it would be interesting to get the reveal of how everybody is, who everybody is, but at the same time, the gimmick could be that you come out with a mask on and you don't really know who you're facing. That'd be kind of interesting. Again, it's kind of like playing off of, if we're looking at like actual culture and we're playing off of like, what is the name of that hacker group? I can never remember their name. The one that's always like big news or whatever, and they wear like the masks. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
What? I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
All right, you guys continue talking.
Are you talking about like the
Anonymous,
group of Russian girls?
It's Anonymous.
Pussy Riot?
It's Anonymous.
You couldn't name. You couldn't remember the name Anonymous?
No. That's why I was asking.
I just think it's funny because it's anonymous. It's not a name. It's anonymous. It's
Yeah.
it's
Well,
just funny.
so if
But yes,
they're
anonymous.
playing off of like something like Anonymous, and then yeah, I mean it could be an interesting group if you did something like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I'm glad they're sticking with it. I hope they drag it out. Like, I don't want them to reveal anytime soon. They need to
And
keep going
don't screw it
with
up.
both of those stories, like with the abduction story and
God,
with
we shouldn't have
this
to say that.
hacker
We
one.
should never have to say that.
But we do. We
say it
always
all the
say
time.
it. We
It's because
always
they
have to
always
say
do.
it. My question for the two of you is, when are you going to put your resumes into WWE or another wrestling promotion to actually be writers? That's what I want to know.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what would
I don't
the
have any
what would the
experience.
hiring process of that be like? Do I just need to pitch the idea of a story? Because if as we all know, I've got at least one really good story for WWE, but I don't know that, you know, how do you pitch an idea to them even? Because they even say like, don't send us ideas, we won't listen to them. Pretty much.
I feel like I could never do that position because I feel like I would have opinions. I would give my opinions. They would either never get answered or I'd be told, shut up, you're fired.
Well, you couldn't
Like,
do it in
I don't think I'm not.
WWE.
Yeah. Yeah. I think ultimately we all know there's one guy who makes the final decision on everything. And I think the reason why we're passionate wrestling fans is because we wouldn't be able to just listen to that one decision. We would say, no, our decision's better. I'm going to fight for it, and then be fired.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to me that I don't think I could truly enjoy being a writer when I have a storyline that I've so, intimately crafted to just have all these nice turns and good, high points, and then like they even let it run for a while, and like let's say you get 70% through that storyline and everything's really hitting and clicking, and then Vince McMahon comes through and says, nope, we're going to do this, and he flips your story on its head and then just totally destroys it. I think as a writer, that would be devastating to me, and I'd have a lot of issues with that. I mean, it's different from like, an idea pitch room. I mean, if I'm not actually writing, but I'm there just to like, help pitch ideas and flesh out, very general ideas, and then somebody else is writing like the scripting of that. I could definitely do a job like that, but I mean, that would be, I think every wrestling fan thinks they could probably do that. Now, whether or not our ideas as a podcast are any better, than normal fans, are they? I mean, are they really? I mean, what is our batting average for
Yeah.
ideas, like good ideas? Like, how often do we pitch an idea and we're like, this is so solidly a good idea that it should have already happened?
I don't know. I would think that we're better than the WWE average.
Yeah, but again, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where the business dictates the writing, and let it, instead of letting the writing bloom for itself and then make business decisions based off of that writing. That's the biggest flaw in the setup, because back in the day when Vince McMahon was coming into the industry, you could do that. It didn't matter. I mean, if you suddenly needed Hogan to win, like the fans, they liked Hogan so much it didn't really matter, and you could do like you know these turns, and it wasn't criticized so much. I think it's easy to think that they were criticized highly at the time, only because now we're sitting in a time of like so many podcasts and so many voices and so many critiques and personal opinions, that you think that at the time when, like, let's say Hogan beats Yokozuna in like 2 seconds or whatever to get the title back after Yokozuna had just won the title from, was it Bret the Hitman Hart? Like, you would think to yourself that at the time that there was a big negative reaction to that, but I guarantee you it was actually more overwhelmingly positive. Because again, it's the mass fans. I mean, it's interesting that the fans for WWE, for instance, the fans like us, the hardcore fans that watch a lot and we watch every pay-per-view, and we're, the ones that are funneling a good bit of money to them at the same time, we don't matter to a certain extent. Especially in the PG realm of wrestling, we don't matter at all. I'm not an 8-year-old little boy. So they don't there are certain things that they don't, frame for, like, that's why I don't like John Cena. That's why I don't like Shorty G. I actually don't know if kids like Shorty G. They probably, they're probably sitting there looking at their parents going, "Why does this guy look like a broke-ass John Cena?"
What happened to John Cena?
Where's John Cena at? Where's Becky Lynch? I want to be the man when I grow up, mommy.
Awful.
It's the nature of wrestling that we deal with, and I don't know that there's that much that we can help. So I guess at times I have to sit there and look at myself and say, well, big baby Jimmy, what are you doing with your life? You're working for a living, and in your free time you're doing a wrestling podcast where you're very opinionated about companies that don't give a shit about you.
That sums it up.
Yeah, there you go.
Here we are.
But that's why I like AEW so much, because they dive into the type of wrestling that kids shouldn't be watching. And I'm not saying that's all wrestling that they do, but like the hardcore element of wrestling, I've always enjoyed that bit. I would not suggest that any kids watch some of these hardcore matches, like that match that Omega and Moxley had. Like, I don't think that kids should be watching that match. But do I like that content? Does that content suit me? I would say yes, it does. Which is probably why I tend to be more favorable to AEW. I give them a lot more leeway. I'm not nearly as critical as I am about WWE, because, again, if all WWE cares about is pushing out a product for the kid that lives down the street and not me, then, when they make dumb decisions, I'm going to call them out on it, because, what have you done for me lately? I mean, that's the way that everybody deals with issues all in their life all the time. That's how people are dealing with coronavirus. That's how people deal with politics, with religion. What have you done for me lately? And so you're forced, when you look at a big corporation, I give independent wrestlers all the leeway in the world, because they're in business for themselves. But when you are so big like WWE that you could literally create a storyline for everybody, one for every different type of wrestling fan, and you don't, and instead you really just mass market it to, well, we want wrestling to be family friendly and kid friendly. It's like, well, yeah, but the last hour of Raw, you could put on some crazy stuff. How many? I don't know. Tell the parents to put their kids to bed. But they don't do that.
The crazy thing on the last hour of Raw was Andrade taking the pin from McIntyre. That's the crazy thing they put on.
That's nothing. And that's fine. You know what? That's fine. They help a lot of people out. They help a lot of kids out, they do plenty of good things. They put on solid programming for the people that they're creating it for. But they don't put on solid content for me, which is why I've stopped kind of watching the main card, because it's not interesting. It's boring wrestling for somebody like me.
And I feel like if you were to actually like look at this in like a market analysis kind of way, don't you think WWE would look at it and be like, we like are sometimes not even selling out, this and that. And let's look back at our history and see like what actually worked for us.
Oh,
And
don't do that. Don't do that, because it's the
and,
crazy times.
and what didn't actually work for us. And is there an in between that we can kind of, hit with everybody?
They're doing
like,
a documentary. No, they're
nope.
doing a documentary on it right now. It's called the Ruthless Aggression Era. That was the in between.
So
that was terrible.
Instead of doing that, we're just going to replay it and show it on the network. That might be the best idea they've had. Let's just not even show any more new wrestling. Let's just show all the old wrestling, and just maybe people won't remember.
Yeah, maybe.
Let's just reshow Raws and SmackDowns from like the 90s and the early 2000s, and let's just see what the reaction of the
you mean
world
the
is.
early 2000s? Because some of them from the 90s they're rough. You can't show them. The Attitude Era was crazy, but it also was the peak of wrestling. The peak of wrestling from a like commercial standpoint, like as a product on television. And why was it? It's and listen, you had a lot of people complaining about it back then. You had a lot of people saying this is the vulgar, you shouldn't show it to kids, yada yada yada. But guess what? Those people tuned in too, because they wanted something to react to, because that's how it works. Again, I get confused by WWE hearing criticisms like that and literally taking them seriously, because these are the same people that go on to any of their like HBOs or the Showtimes or the FXs and watch really crazy shows that are very inappropriate, and yet somehow they say, but you can't compare wrestling to that. It's not the same thing. What are you talking about? Of course it's the same thing. All it is something that you're sitting there watching and entertaining for yourself. That's what a television show is. That's the basics of it.
Yeah. Vince McMahon coined it. He said it's entertainment.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's entertainment.
And the problem is that, if we let Vince McMahon take control, I don't know, it might be a little bit more entertaining. You'd have to deal with a lot more pooping and peeing jokes and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't know the answer. I think the answer is what I already said. I think the answer is they're comfortable with the model that they have, and the model that they have does not have me in mind personally. So therefore, I can only do this podcast so much and like start to become woke about this topic, and still watch it. So do I watch the big pay-per-views? Yeah, I do. Do I watch the weekly show? Nah, no, I don't. Because you're trying to shove less talented people that you're just trying to push as being over, and that kids really love, and that women really love, and that part of the market, no offense to those groups, but that part of the market doesn't watch as much wrestling as our part of the market. So when you're trying to push it, you're trying to push those things to what end? Oh, well, we're going to bring in new wrestling fans. Well, how well has that been going for the history of wrestling?
Jimmy might have just alienated two out of the three of our listeners right there.
No. I mean, I think I could have a perfectly constructive conversation with Sarah about this. Because it's not me. I'm not insulting women. I don't think I am. I'm insulting WWE for thinking that the best market strategy that they have is to make wrestling that's based on kids and women, when that is not the majority of people that are watching your show. The majority of people watching your show are like men that are aged like, I don't know, like what is it, like 18 to 34 or something like that? Something like this? Yeah. I don't know, am I wrong? Are you guys afraid to say that I'm right because you don't want to alienate yourself because I've thrown myself out there at this point?
No,
No.
I agree with I agree with it. I wish it was, you know, I mean, and on the same point of me wanting it to be more like it was when we were growing up, like as teenagers into young adults. On the other half of me is like, but would it even get some people kind of back into it that have gone away from WWE?
Well, you guys also watch with kids though, so that has to change your
True.
opinion as well.
It does. It does. And I mean, there are definitely like some things that I would not want, her kind of, watching. But like, I mean, it's also because she's 12. So it's kind of like that verge of, what's too much, what's enough, what's just plain boring kind of area.
And maybe, what's interesting? Maybe the answer is something that's kind of obvious and already existing, which is that if you're into a show that goes way over the edge or closer to over the edge, watch Impact. If you're looking for something kind of in the middle, watch AEW. And if you're looking for, family style wrestling, watch WWE. That doesn't mean that you don't get high quality wrestling on any of those shows, but the storylines that they push on Impact are a lot edgier than AEW, and AEW are a lot edgier than what they push on WWE. And then I guess, the ultimate's like NWA Power, which is like so super old school wrestling that, almost to a ridiculous manner. But we love you, NWA Power.
It's funny because I feel like I push the envelope a little bit with my kids and what they watch and allowing them to kind of see some of this stuff that maybe it's too old for them. That's fine. I mean, what did I do as a kid? I snuck into seeing things that were too old for me at the time, even if
Me
they
too.
were just violence and stuff, right?
Me too.
It hasn't affected me. I mean, I'm not like a mass murderer or anything. I'm not a, a terrible person. So I think there's a line that you can cross comfortably and safely with these younger fans, but still, not go too far. Like ECW, probably too far, right? Old school ECW, that's probably too far. But the Attitude Era, I don't think that's too far. I think you're crossing the line, but you're still close enough to it that it's okay.
Well, Attitude Era, like, so brawn panty matches.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. I would like to remove those matches and insert good women's wrestling, which is what we're getting these days. So that's not. I don't think that's a fair comparison to what we're looking for. I
But I
think the
think
Attitude Era is the other portion. What the men were doing, the bra and panties was the way the women were getting over. The women get over differently now.
Well, some
yeah,
of
but
them do.
your point, Chris, I
Some.
I would mix in what they did in the Attitude Era with the men's side of things and then throw in those almost same kind of storylines with the women, because now you have women that you have let me rephrase what I was going to say. You have a larger number of women who are legitimately talented wrestlers, other than just, well, we have a very small handful of women wrestlers who can actually wrestle, and everyone else is more so eye candy.
Which I think having both is important still. So if you can hit the combination
Sure.
of the two, I mean, I don't look at the men that way, but I have to imagine the women that do watch it probably think the same way. That they would want the men's wrestlers that they watch to be, you know, highly successful at wrestling, but also good to look at. I mean, that's the kind of the nature of the beast, right?
Yeah. Ultimately, it's image, right? Image is part of it. It's not just talent, it's also image. So I I think there's a way to do it. I don't. I think we say they won't do it. They can't do it. But the more we talk about it, I think if somebody would just go, and AEW is a good point. If somebody would just go and try and push the envelope and see how far you can push it, I think they would realize that they could push it a lot further than we think. I mean, they'll get people who complain. You're always going to get that. You're always going to get the complainers out there. You're always going to get
Who
the
cares
groups
about them
that don't like what you're doing. But professional sports get that now. I mean, the NFL gets criticized, the NBA gets criticized, the NHL gets criticized, Major League Baseball gets criticized, but they still do what they have to do. They still set rules up that people criticize. Well, why can't WWE do things they get criticized for and still move forward? They could do it. They again, I think it's one person making the decisions, and he thinks what can be done is this right now. He thinks what is popular is this right now. I think if they had more voices that were truly being listened to, you'd get more of a product like AEW, because you could tell that they're listening to a lot of different voices, and sometimes they hit home runs and sometimes they strike out.
Yeah, but you have to strike out to then say, and I mean, to their credit, one of the things that they did that struck out the most, and we've talked about it multiple times, was the Nightmare Collective. And they rolled that all back because they were like, oh, this really isn't working, so yeah, we won't do it anymore.
Right.
Now you're waiting
down our throats.
So yeah, you're waiting for them to do it with Britt Baker, but you have to realize that half of the wrestling fans that watch AEW actually really like that Britt Baker character.
Do they?
They do. I see lots of positive things about that character, actually. Not saying they're wrestling.
I need people to come tell me that. I need social media to come to arms and tell me that I'm wrong and that Britt Baker is working, because I have not seen that. I have not seen people commending her. Granted, maybe I'm not looking for it, but I need people to come point out the fact that there is a group out there that actually think that this character is working, because I don't see it.
You can always push out a poll on your Twitter too. Although I would put it in a very friendly way, because I don't think you want to have Britt Baker on your bad side, because just in case she ever works on your teeth, she might rip them all out.
I don't have many to pull out, so I'm safe. I'm not worried about
it. Oh, boys, we're at the end. So if we got any hot takes left, I'll do the hot take roundtable, and I don't have any like snarky non-wrestling ones to do, so I guess I could throw a hot take out first. My hot take in general would be, one of the things that I want these wrestling companies to understand is, when you remove the crowd, and we've talked about this before, you get a spotlight put on the storyline that you have created. And so this is the time. This time right now is the time to learn effective storytelling versus ineffective storytelling, and any of these weak storylines that you have for either of the brands, and there are a couple for all of them. Wean them out. Take them away. Do it while the majority of wrestling fans are giving you a pass because of what we're dealing with. Because once you start getting crowds back, if you immediately push all these BS storylines that nobody likes, guess what? Your viewership's going to go down, because people are like, you know what? I've been indoors all this time. I want to go to the park or something like that. I want to go to a shopping mall. I want to go out and about, go eat at a restaurant for the first time. I don't want to watch wrestling because they're giving me dreck. Clear the dreck out. That's my hot take. Boys?
Go ahead, Chris.
I got nothing.
Oh, well, go ahead. I don't know if it's really a hot take, but it was an interesting thing that I read earlier this morning. I was just kind of perusing through Twitter. I haven't been doing it that much since the apocalypse zombie coronavirus happened, but an ex WWE wrestler and a couple of other promotions, Matt Striker, who happens to be a friend of myself and Christopher, um, put up a tweet about something that his mom said to him, and it was came to the point of, "Hey, Matthew, why doesn't the WWE do anything for its wrestlers to give them any sort of uh like degree or certificate programs or some kind of give back to them, so that in hopes that if anything like this happened, or if they got injured really bad or whatever, that they could find a different job outside of wrestling." And I thought it was actually a very interesting comment, to which Matt in the comments actually put down that WWE or WWF, depending on what time era you're looking at, had some sort of like quote scholarship program, but it wasn't available to everybody. Apparently, it was only available to like one or two a year. To which actually Matt finished out his masters getting paid for by the WWE. So it kind of leads to a whole other uh, kind of thought process. Should wrestling promotions, especially one that is as popular as WWE and has as much money as WWE, barring this whole coronavirus thing, be doing something for like the other side of the professional development of these wrestlers if they so choose. And it was kind of an interesting thing that, his mom actually posed.
I think that the short answer to that is yes, because it is a standard practice, I think, in so many corporations. That being said, heck, we could do a whole podcast on that probably.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting kind of thing to think about. And to Maddie's kind of career, he started out, wrestling in New York, and he made it into WWE and wrestled there for a while, and then kind of branched over into commentary and interviewing, and now he's doing a little bit of wrestling, but a lot more on the side of like TV producing and commentary and things like that. So it would be more, I think it would be really beneficial for, these promotions that, their livelihood is put into these wrestlers to, kind of give them a little bit more of a quote unquote maybe give back than, maybe they get sometimes.
Well, little mini hot take to that though. Maybe instead of offering these guys um, like scholarship opportunities, maybe just give them like full blown healthcare through the company.
Hey, there you go.
Well, Chris, you get the coveted last take. Doesn't have to be wrestling. It can be about anything.
That's good because I really don't have a wrestling hot take today. So you can order directly from Utz. I found out that's some just news really. I ordered giant barrels of sourdough pretzels and crunchy cheese, crunchy cheese curls, or I guess it's not crunchy cheese curls, it's just crunchy Cheetos. Um, Shout out to Mr. and Mrs. Kramer for always buying the party mix at their house, and me being
Creamy
able to
K.
steal every single crunchy Cheeto that was in there and not eat anything else out of the party mix. So hey
and
guys,
and
I
proceeded to get yelled at because of
yes,
it.
yes, I would always get yelled at for pulling all the crunchy Cheetos out and not eating anything else that was in the party mix. So I've grown up. I've bought my own barrel, and I can just eat crunchy Cheetos whenever I want now. And go check it out. Check out Utz. They actually have just giant barrels of really good snacks. It helps when you're binge watching wrestling, binge watching shows, or just stuck in the house because of a pandemic.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's the last hot take. So thank you everybody for listening to episode 55. Utz, not our sponsor, but could be. We will see you. We'll see everybody next week. Thank you for listening, and hope you guys enjoy this next exciting week of wrestling. All right, guys. We'll talk to you later.